Right, welcome everyone. My name is Marie Nash and I am the interim CEO at the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we want to thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that while we meet virtually, I am in the city of Hamilton, which is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this is the land that is covered by Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the First Nation. This employment-facing webinar is an important one that we're really happy to offer as part of Hamilton's annual Newcomer Week in collaboration with the Hamilton Immigration Partnership Council. This session is kindly sponsored by RBC. So we know many businesses are interested in expanding their workforce. However, many are experiencing hiring shortages since the pandemic. We really hope this webinar will serve as a good introductory session to be better equipped to hire and, more importantly, retain great new employees from a growing talent of newcomers and immigrants to our city. So in this session, we have a team of experts in the city who are here to help us with a few things. First, learning more about Hamilton's diverse immigrant labor force. Second, learning more about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and how this can be used to your advantage in attraction and retention of great candidates. 3, hiring and learning from some fantastic local employers, big and small, who are doing great work hiring newcomers and immigrants in our city. And lastly, we're going to introduce you to 2 of our largest immigrant employment service providers in the city, who are going to provide free services for employers looking to connect with newcomer job seekers. So I also want to let you know that while we will have room for questions and answers, that we will have room for questions and answers at the end. So feel free to direct any questions you may have for any of the speakers in the chat, and I will get to them at the end. So with that, I'd like to pass this along to our first speaker, Khadija from Hamilton Workforce Planning, to start us off.
Thank you, Marie, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khadija Hamidou, and I'm the Executive Director for Workforce Planning Hamilton. It's great seeing everyone here, and thank you to HIPC for hosting this conversation so that everybody gets a better understanding on the benefits of hiring newcomers to our businesses, companies, and organizations. A little bit more about Workforce Planning Hamilton, also known as WPH, is that our organization leads the conversation in labor market information. So we understand the benefits of newcomers being a part of the labor market in Hamilton, as well as provincially wide, especially when looking at how diverse the newcomer population is in Hamilton, but also looking at the barriers many newcomers face when trying to insert themselves in the labor market. So what I'll do is this next slide. So what I wanted to highlight first is the how Hamilton specifically is one of Canada's most diverse economies, regularly outpacing national averages, which I thought was a really important aspect to start with. According to the most recent census that we were able to reflect on, immigration accounts for nearly 100% of Canada's labor force growth. And I think growth is going to be the key word in this slide, because roughly 75% of Canada's population growth comes from immigration, mostly in the economic category. As we continue to evaluate the upcoming census data, I also wanted to bring your attention to the current local labor market plan, which we released at Workforce Planning Hamilton in April 2022. In 2020-21, moving into 2022, newcomers have higher unemployment rates at 8%, compared to people born in Canada, which was at 7.6%. I won't get too much into the details of the numbers, but what's interesting about these percentages is the highest labor force participation rate. So people who are actively seeking jobs, working in the economy, are among newcomers who came to Canada 5 or less years earlier, which was at 75.4%, higher than people born in Canada, which was at 65.6%. So you can just see that in the chart below. So these numbers really showcase how much work we as employers need to do when looking into hiring more diverse individuals. So with that being said, I would like to just move on to the next slide and really highlight the diversity and benefits of hiring newcomers. Thank you. Newcomers bring so what I wanted to do is just highlight the benefits again. So newcomers bring a diversity perspective to Canada, which means that newcomers have worked in international contexts and bring cultural, linguistic, and marketing knowledge to businesses. So more than 70% of immigrants reported a language other than English and French as their mother tongue, which is very helpful for businesses to really diversify themselves and reach out to other populations that they may not have that language connection to. Newcomers will help Canada meet its labor needs and shortages in the coming years. So going back to the slide before, when we talked about the census and 100% growth in the labor market, newcomers will continue to play an increasingly significant role in Canada's labor force and is a key reason for Canada's investment in attracting skilled workers from other countries. Over 51% of recent immigrants have a university degree compared to 20% of Canadian born, which means that a lot of newcomers who are coming into Canada are skilled, are ready to work, and do have the potential to really uplift your organization, your business, and your company. Employer business competitiveness. Internationally trained newcomers have the skills and talent to help employers compete in an increasing global marketplace. Reflecting on diverse client base with a diverse staff team is critical for you as an employer. So developing new markets, for instance, where newcomer job seekers have valuable cultural knowledge to help develop new local and global markets for businesses looking to expand. Workplace innovation is really one that I really wanted to touch base on, because internationally trained professionals bring fresh perspective to Canadian organizations, helping with ideation, new thinking, and introducing different business methods. So overall, when you're hiring a newcomer, expanding networks and connections are really crucial in this point, because newcomer talent can often bring valuable connections to other potential employees from their communities, and they can bring connections to potentially useful national and international organizations. And I just want to leave it there, and I want to thank you once again for having me, and I'll pass it over to Wade. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Khadija. I'm going to be speaking about attraction, retention, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Wade Poziemka. I'm a human rights lawyer at Ross McBride here in Hamilton, and a fair bit of my practice is around human rights and equity and diversity. Next slide, please. So like all lawyers, I'm going to start with the problem. That's what lawyers do. We focus on the problem and we aim to fix it or exploit it, depending on your perspective. Most employers in Canada have taken steps to promote a more diverse and inclusive workplace, but a large number have still not turned their mind to it. So looking at some of the statistics, 54% of working Canadians have observed instances of discrimination towards other employees in the workplace. But notably, when you're looking at those who are diverse, 16% more are more likely to observe such an instance. 45% of working Canadians reported that they experienced discrimination themselves. And again, notably, when you're looking at diverse employees, 26% more were more likely to experience discrimination. 62% of working Canadians reported that their employer provides a safe and trusted way to address discrimination and bullying. Now that's a relatively high number, but think about the flip side, 38% haven't, and there isn't a safe and trusted way to address discrimination and bullying, and that's much too high of a number. There's issues with EDI and hiring. We saw from Khadijah's presentation that the ratio for unemployment for newcomers is higher than that for individuals born in Canada. And part of that is systemic discrimination around preferring Canadian experience and valuing Canadian experience and Canadian education as higher than experience and education gained elsewhere. This is something that the Ontario Human Rights Commission has acknowledged and has dealt with. They actually have a policy on Canadian experience that touches on these issues that I'd encourage all of you to take a look at. I think what we're seeing with these numbers, though, is that EDI is not a real priority in many Canadian workplaces, and that's a real problem. And I'm going to talk about the pros of EDI, but also the downside of not having proper EDI policies in place and what that can mean for your workplace. Next slide, please. One other thing to note just quickly is that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted us all, but it's had a disproportionate impact on different groups. And so if you look at the statistics here, you'll see that reasons for unfair treatment have gone down since the start of the pandemic in most or all areas, with the exception of race or ethnicity, where it's gone up considerably. And so again, while we're all impacted by the pandemic, there's a greater need for EDI, and that need is exacerbated during this time. Next slide. What we also know is that employees, whether diverse employees, newcomers to Canada, or employees who are born in Canada, value EDI and inclusivity. Going back to some numbers again, 61% of working Canadians strongly believe leadership promotes diversity in the workplace, but again, looking at the flip side, 39% doesn't. 63% of working Canadians strongly believe that leadership ensures a culture of inclusivity. Again, 37% doesn't. And most importantly, I think for employers to understand is that 62% of job seekers indicated that they would turn down a job if they did not feel that diversity and inclusion was valued. And I think that's across the board. That isn't just newcomers to Canada, that's all employees. And so employers who don't have EDI enhancing measures will lose talented candidates, and they may not even know the reason why. You'll be playing with 60% of the potential workforce and all the limitations that come with that. Next slide, please. And so there's also consequences for a lack of EDI initiatives. And often that's where most of my work is in the human rights world, when there aren't inclusivity isn't valued, and when there aren't policies around EDI, not only policies, but the commitment behind those policies, you get human rights complaints and you have retention issues, and that affects your bottom line as an employer. It can lead to isolation and adverse treatment for members of marginalized communities. I don't want to talk too much about the law and bore everybody, but there is one case that I do want to touch upon, and that's a case that came out in September of 2021, so just fairly recently, and it's called Nelson versus Goodberry Restaurant Group. And I'll put the citation in the chat later for anyone who wants to take a look at it. But in this case, the complainant was a non-binary, gender fluid, in transgendered person who used the pronouns they and them. The person was a server at a restaurant and made the employer aware of the pronouns that they use. This employee's boss, the bar manager in the restaurant, resented having to use the preferred pronouns and continually referred to them as she and her, sweetheart, honey, and pinky. The employee addressed this with the boss, and it led to a heated conversation with a minor physical altercation where the employee ultimately slapped the bar manager on the back and walked out, and that employee was terminated. And at the hearing of this matter, when pushed for why the employee was terminated, the owner said, well, the employee was militant and not a good fit. Human rights application was filed. In this case, I'll just jump right to the conclusion, but there's some things I want to talk about in it to highlight some of the issues that we're grappling with here. The tribunal found there was discrimination. They ordered $30,000 in general damages. They ordered the employer to have a pronoun policy, and they also ordered training. And this case is meaningful for several different reasons. First, it talks about the intention to discriminate. And the tribunal says human rights is not concerned with intention, but it's concerned with impacts. So it doesn't mean that intention's not relevant. So when we're looking at EDI policies and we're focused on gender identity or pronouns, for example, there's a difference between someone who might make a mistake with pronouns, but correct themselves and they're trying to get it correctly. Still not appropriate, but it's very different than someone who intends to use different pronouns as an attack against somebody by calling them she, her intentionally, or by calling them sweetheart or pinky. The tribunal said, looked at why this bar manager in this specific case was using these terms and paid particular attention to two things this individual mentioned. One was, you don't have a right to be policing my language. I can say what I want. The other was, you're undermining the freedoms that my grandfather fought for in the war. And so this leads to an interesting question. Are employers required, Our employees, are we in our workplaces required to use somebody's identified pronouns? And the answer is yes, because we have to respect their gender identity and expression, and pronouns are an important part of that identity. Now, interestingly enough, the employer in this case had policies around EDI. It had human rights policies. It tried to promote an inclusive workplace, but it didn't quite understand its obligations, and it didn't follow through on the policies to the extent it ought to have. And in my view, having these policies and having this talk is useless if you're not going to stand behind it and make sure that it actually matters and applies to your workplace. So the employer said, well, look, we approached this bar manager, his name was Mr. Goebel, and we told Mr. Goebel, be as accommodating as possible. And the tribunal said, this isn't an accommodation. This is a basic obligation that every person holds towards people in their environment. So don't treat it as an accommodation. I often hear in the workplace, or in cases when I'm dealing with gender identity on either side of the fence, well, you know, why do people care so much about pronouns? I don't care what anybody calls me. Well, fine, but you're not somebody, perhaps the person saying that isn't somebody who's trans, non-binary, or non-cisgender. And so it does have a disparate impact, and it's something that we have to recognize. And so while it might not offend you, it's still contributing to a workplace that is not inclusive. The employer response here was, well, let's give this person a few chances. This is something new. These pronouns are new. We're all kind of struggling with it. That was the essential response of the employer, and it's completely misguided. This isn't a case where there's conflict between two employees and you're trying to give someone a chance to come around and learn how to treat somebody respectfully and you know, with an EDI lens and with a human rights lens. It's something where there's plain discrimination happening, and it should be dealt with in a manner that, in my view, is disciplinary. It's a violation of a policy. Tribunal noted a person who must endure a poisoned work environment is constantly in pain, is constantly humiliated, and is always under stress because they know that an evaluation is being formed on irrelevant criteria. So when you have workplaces that are not inclusive and there's an EDI problem in that workplace, people who are experiencing that have one of two choices. Either it can start to affect work performance and it can start to essentially destroy them, or they can speak out about it. But the problem is, when they speak out about it, then they become not team players, or they become aggressive. And that image that's painted of them is used to justify the discrimination in the first place. So it's really important why employers need to have the commitment, but also, and the policies and the tone right from the top, but stand behind it and do something about it when they're not properly followed. In the tribunal, the last thing that I'll mention here, the tribunal said when employees are confrontational or aggressive because they're experiencing a discriminatory work environment, discipline for that aggression is a violation of the code. So here, the termination was a human rights violation, and the employer focused on the action of that employee who had underwent, repeated instances of discrimination. The employer focused on, the final blow up, or after having experienced that repeatedly, now that's used to justify the termination, and the context is completely forgotten. Next slide, please. And so I'll leave it with some strategies to enhance EDI in the workplace. The first is a clear commitment from senior leadership. The second is honest and open communication with employees, and also routine discussions and meetings. And this is reaffirming the values and commitment of the workforce, but also evaluating and seeking feedback. Somebody at the very top of an organization may not have the pulse of what's happening, at the lower levels. And so routine discussions and meetings is very important to make sure that the workplace is becoming more inclusive and the EDI policies are having their effect. Obviously, policies are important, but this is one of my pet peeves, because often I see policies that aren't followed, or policies that are just there to impress people. And when they're not acted on, those policies, in my view, do more harm than they do good. So have policies, but follow through on them. And then training, setting the tone right from the start at onboarding, making sure people understand why the policies are in place and the impact of what happens when those policies aren't followed. And then the last is promptly dealing with issues of EDI, like we did not see in that case, the Nelson case that I highlighted for you. That's it. Now we'll turn to Teresa Horick, who will talk about Hamilton employer experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wade. And it's always so interesting for me to listen and learn from you. You are so knowledgeable, and you've helped us many times, which I appreciate. In any case, I'm Teresa. I'm the CEO of Lowlay, which is we're based out of McMaster Innovation Park. And Lowlay is a back office support company that I started back in 2017. As an immigrant myself, I quickly realized when I came to Canada how difficult it was to enter the workplace without Canadian experience and a Canadian education. And when I started this company, I made one of my missions to have a pass for newcomers and new Canadians to gain work experience through Lowlay. So we work with agencies like the YWCA, we work with educational partners like Trias College, Columbia College, and then a lot of different channels through the city and referrals where we'll get newcomers knocking on our doors looking for an opportunity. Because we do administrative tasks and bookkeeping, there's a lot of things that is easy for a newcomer to kind of dabble a little bit in a Canadian workplace. So the results that we found by doing this has been really outstanding. Half of our team are newcomers or new Canadians, so that's quite a large portion of it. And I think one of the biggest challenges that newcomers face, and specifically I faced when I came to Canada, is that I don't have my extended family here, right? You come and you know no one. So what has happened with this bringing immigrants into our workforce is that they created almost like their own family, a work family, which is great for me for culture because it's such a cohesive team. They are supportive and they treat each other with so much respect. I think for me, that's really valuable. And that's not something that is easily changed in a company, is that company culture. So to have that off the back is definitely a big advantage. So it's a very supportive environment and it's a tightly knit team because of the number of immigrants that we have in the company. I think one of the next advantages for me that I see, it always comes out when we do strategic planning. A diverse team brings really valuable viewpoints and ideas to the table. And I think like Khadisha mentioned earlier, this is very valuable for workplace innovation. So we see this all the time because we have staff from everywhere, China, India, Iran, and it's just, they come with the viewpoints and things that they've lived through and seen. And when you bring this all together and meld it into, well, we've got a challenge in a Canadian environment, we come up with really innovative solutions to overcome it and things that I wouldn't have thought about. So I do value that, and I do value my team for that. I think something else that always stands out for me is that, and again, from my own experience when I came to Canada, newcomers are really eager to prove themselves in a new country. And I've always found that the team here give 120%. They always give extra. They always go the extra mile. Yes, there is a cultural learning curve when you're a newcomer, and sometimes a bit of a language barrier, even for myself, although I'm from South Africa and we speak English, a lot of words aren't the same. So there was a few years where there were some misunderstandings, or you had to ask for clarification. But it's such a small portion, of if you weigh that up against the benefits of having a newcomer. And it also gives our Canadian staff an opportunity to step up as mentors, right? To teach them about Canadian culture and correct the language. And I'm sure I'm still using the wrong words, and my accent, people don't always understand it, but it brings flavor to what we do, right? And to I think just the culture, right? The cohesiveness of the team is that everyone helps everyone. So lunch at Lowlay is always an adventure with very interesting conversations and foods that come to the table. We do potlucks, and it's just, there's always something new, and we're all learning, and we're learning from each other. I mean, I would strongly encourage any business to include newcomers in their workforce if they haven't already. It's truly a rewarding experience. And I think That's it from me. I'd be happy to answer any questions later on, but for the moment, I'm going to pass over to Maria Holland from RBC to share their experience.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I can truly relate to so much of what you relayed today. I was inspired. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Holland, and I'm the community manager in Hamilton, Brantford, and Norfolk communities for RBC. I'm thrilled to be here today to join these incredible professionals for this very important conversation, supporting newcomers and celebrating diversity. This is something that's extremely close to my heart. And a big reason for that is because I too, I'm a daughter of immigrant parents who, migrated to Canada in 1975. My mother was Jamaican, my father was Cuban, and myself and my siblings were born in England. So we had some major culture shocks when we transitioned over, but the purpose of coming to Canada, we had deemed it to be the land of opportunity. And our parents wanted us to have greater access to better education, better jobs and careers. And we had the privilege of being connected to a number of community sources that really helped guide our very fantastic experience during the Canadian educational and job market. So as a newcomer, I do recognize and understand the value of connecting to community sources and events such as this fantastic event today. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So a diverse workplace is one that reflects the makeup of its own community. It's an environment where you bring your true self to work and to thrive. At RBC, we embrace diversity and inclusion for innovation and for growth. It's one of our most fundamental values because we know that how very valuable every unique individual perspective can be. We celebrate diverse backgrounds and unique experiences. We value the differences to help our communities prosper. And for over 150 years, RBC has been supporting newcomers get settled and established in Canada. Diversity and inclusion has been one of our cornerstone values for years, and our D&I inclusion and vision has been among the most inclusive and successful companies. As our CEO, Dave Mackay, shared in our 2021 Diversity and Inclusion Report, our purpose of helping clients thrive and communities prosper is core to who we are as an organization and can only be achieved when everyone has the opportunity to achieve their fullest potential. RBC is more than committed to accelerating this pace of change. By putting diversity into action, we attract, engage, and develop very strong talent, including the newcomers to Canada. RBC's purpose for helping clients thrive and community prosper is the very core of some of our key foundational values, as previously said. We recognize that achieving our vision of a diverse workforce won't happen overnight or by accident. We have to be intentional in our hiring practices, make it a part of our policies to include newcomers as part of our workforce hiring strategies. The newcomers, as Teresa previously said, they appreciate the opportunities. They are committed and loyal to all the opportunities afforded to them. Next slide, please. As Canada's one of Canada's best diversity employers. We're proud to serve our community in more than 200 languages. The community also includes many newcomers to Canada and RBC. And we believe that the best way to serve them is to rely on their wisdom and experiences of those who have made the same journey to Canada. We are a company made up of talented and dedicated individuals, people who invest their skills, their energy, and passion into making us a successful organization that we are today, and hopefully one that we will be tomorrow as well. Our different backgrounds and experiences aren't just accepted by RBC, they're in fact celebrated. We have supports in place to do this from within, including many of our employee resource groups, such as Mosaic, which we value the complete integration of diversity and inclusion in every aspect of our workplace. Next slide, please. Thank you. We encourage businesses to join us in helping newcomers call Canada their home. Newcomers contribute to greater innovation and creativity in our workplaces. They contribute a far and vast range of skill sets. They increase our employee satisfaction due to their opportunities afforded to them. And a really key thing is they understand and relate so much better to our clients because of their diverse backgrounds. Next slide, please. Many of our newcomer advisors and employees were newcomer to Canada themselves, and they bring their very valued shared experiences and knowledge to help other newcomers navigate their settlement journey in Canada. Offering a differentiated experience, our mission is to provide support, guidance, and resources and connections to the community to make our newcomers' settlement much easier. We value and focus on partnership and sponsorship, relevant content, product offers and services, both to our newcomer clients and our newcomer employees. As we speak today, we've got 50 newcomer families that we've partnered with the Sheraton, and we're opening new accounts with them today. Tonight, we have an advice-based event where we're expecting about 40 to 50 families to come and experience financial literacy as a newcomer with RBC. We also have our meeting place, which is a differentiated environment, banking environment, where it's more relaxed and focused on relationship and advice, where people can feel comfortable to come as they are to experience support navigating through their financial and life issues. And finally, RBC, we want to make a great social impact. As senior and hiring leaders at RBC, we're trying our very best to do our part to embrace diversity by hiring newcomers into our business. Hiring newcomer talent is a very important part of our growth strategy and success. And simply put, hiring newcomers is a win-win outcome for all. Thank you for your time today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Maria, for the information on RBC's programs. Thank you for all the other my colleagues who are presenting today, and a very special thank you to HIPC and the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce for arranging this really important session. To all of our attendees today, thank you very much for joining. I know that if you're joining a session entitled Connecting Employers to Immigrant Talent, it's because you are looking for immigrant talent, and perhaps you're looking for practical next steps and who to connect with in the city. Maybe you're looking for contact information and resources and so much more. So we want you to know that you're in the very right session if those are the things that you're looking for. Next slide, please. As you can see, there's a number of different organizations in Hamilton that offer a wide range of employment services, and we're all very well equipped to support your recruitment needs. In a few minutes, we're going to share HIPC's brand new website, which is a resource for employers looking for recruitment and support. Our goal, of course, is to connect you to immigrant talent. We're going to start off with the Immigrants Working Center. Next slide, please. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Uzma Qureshi, and I am the Director of Employment Services at the Immigrants Working Center. Our focus is, and our only clientele that we work with is newcomers to Canada, whether they're refugee claimants, permanent residents, convention refugees. We work with everyone that comes to the country. All of the clients that we work with have valid work permits. So that's never an area of concern for the employers that we're working with. One area that we specialize in is looking at sector-specific employment services. So as opposed to something where it's general employment services where you would come in and say, you know, I'm looking for employment, can someone help me? And you're matched with an employment counselor. Here, what we do is we have specific employment specialists who have portfolios to deal with the various sectors. And we do this because we know that there are direct benefits of having sector-specific services. Every employment specialist is an expert in the specific sector that they're working with. They know what some of the recruitment activities are like, who the major employers are, what the recruitment processes are like with those organizations. And of course, they have knowledge of trends in the industry and how it is that we can enhance the employer relationships. Our connections to employers are that much stronger because we are sector specific, and you will only be working with one or two specific employment specialists. And the prospects of employers informing our own program content is quite big. So if we have a sector that is really looking for a large number of recruits, we can make a program very specific to that role to help train newcomers with occupational specific language, any sort of training that is provided, whether it's technical training or soft skills training, and have them ready for employment within a short period of time. And of course, the last benefit is the satisfaction that our job seekers, our newcomer job seekers feel, as well as the employers feel, because we've just shortened that recruitment process quite a bit. So here on the screen, you'll see a few areas that we have the sectors lined out within their portfolio. So we have a few counselors working within the STEM, health and education sectors. We have a few employment specialists that work within the business occupation, so business, finance, law, and administration. And you can see examples of those roles there as well. We have a number of different employment specialists that are working with sales and service occupations, as well as manufacturing and construction occupations. And we have a few employment specialists that work within our WorkLink program. And that WorkLink program is language and preparation training and health and safety training for specific roles as the labor market really needs in that moment of time. So an example of that is general construction. So around this time, we know that construction is booming. So we'll have work links that prepare newcomers for employment within the construction trades. We also know that there is a large shortage of AZ truck drivers as well as personal support workers. So we'll have programs related to that as well. In the past, we noticed that there was a shortage of admin personnel, so we just completed an office administration WorkLink program as well. Next slide, please. What we do with each job seeker is really individual. But we know that everyone that comes through our organization and participates in our programs, there are different aspects of the pre-employment, even before they get to the job search. Language and soft skill development is incredibly important. We know that although people come from countries that speak English very well and they've worked for multinationals, it's the sector specific, the occupational specific terminology that they might need some refreshing on or learning of. And so we'll focus on those areas. Communication varies from country to country. And so we work on what local negotiation skills would look like, what some conflict resolution would look like. We talk a lot about the rights and responsibilities, both of the employee and of the employers. And of course, all of that ties into workplace culture and what it is that one can expect when entering the workplace, and what it is that one should require when entering a workplace. The next part is the training. Is this an occupation that's going to require technical training or licensing? Is it a regulated occupation? So those are things that we go through with each individual client as they come through, job seeker as they come through. So whether it's in trades occupations, customer service, there's health and safety occupations, we'll go through, health and safety certifications, we'll go through that with each client as well. And of course, pre-employment counseling, which takes place, which is your resume development or targeting based on the sector, intensive interview preparation that takes place, and information to the labor market. And of course, after that starts the job search. Connections with employers is what we can offer. We have multiple job fairs and networking opportunities throughout the year. And there is a lot of job development assistance. So because we're talking to employers today, I think that it's really important for me to mention that when we're working with employers, it's really important for us to get a really good understanding of what those employer needs are. That way, when we start looking at clients and talking to our database or large database of individuals that were newcomers that we're working with, the resumes that you get from us will be those that fit the job that you're looking for. So it does shorten the recruitment process because you're not going through many resumes. You're going through resumes that are a good fit based on what you've shared with us and the questions that we've asked you as well. Next slide, please. This is a brand new program that we've just launched. It is two streams actually. One is a Trades Gateway, and it helps internationally trained tradespeople become licensed here in Ontario using the Skilled Trades Ontario Trades Equivalency Assessment. We help individuals through the process. We coach them on what kind of documentation they're going to need, what the length of the process is, as well as having different study groups for the specific trades. So we have this project, Trades Gateway, which is a virtual portal, an online portal where one can go through and access live webinars as well as pre-recorded sessions. There will be information about, how to network, what the labor market looks like, what jobs are available in that specific trade that they're looking to achieve. And also there will be study groups for the challenge tests that are taking place for each specific trade. On the other side of this, we also have an employment counselor that works one-on-one with those individuals who need that extra support in the process of their TEA process and also to challenge their test. So in a nutshell, that's what the Immigrants Working Center does. And now I'd like to pass it on to my colleague, Deborah Schwentek.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. And I guess I'm the last speaker before we move on to the question period. I just want to thank you all for attending. Thank you for being here. And I just want to share a little bit about YWCA Employment Services as part of the HIPC community. Both myself and Uzma are co-chairs of the Economic Stability Committee, which is assisting newcomers and employers who are looking at hiring newcomers integrate into the Canadian workplace. Some of the programs that we have specifically at the Y, we have a program, it's called Join for Newcomers. So it is an employment program, but we also have resources for newcomer women, and Two-Spirit LGBTQ youth and individuals who are looking at additional supports that they might need. So when you think about the YWCA, I always say, remember, we have a W there, and that is that we are supporting women. And when we look at diversity, we look at some of those fields that women have had a hard time entering, looking at skilled trades, looking at that first job, getting those skills and experience. We have a number of programs. We have a STEP program for youth. Again, 15 to 30-year-olds. We have an opportunities program for persons with disabilities. We have pre-apprenticeship programs for women and non-binary folks. And a newcomer can come into any of those streams and also be referred to various streams. So if a newcomer comes in looking for support for finding that first job, and part of that might be that they have never worked in Canada or that they have limited skills, we can try and put them into the appropriate program, working with them. We have individual counseling services for folks. We have workshops, we have job fairs, we do point of sale, cash register training for folks, smart serves, safe food handlers, first aid. So depending on what program a client or a program participant might be in, we do that needs assessment, find out what their career goals are, and try to focus them into the right program for them. We look at, very similar to IWC, employment laws. We bring in guest speakers. We don't want to be the only face or head that they see talking. We want to make sure that we're giving them well-rounded information. So we rely on the Hamilton Legal Clinic to come in and speak. We have various other folks that come in and actually let them know different perspectives on their rights in the Canadian workplace, introduction into the Canadian workplace, the workplace, conflict resolution, all of those things. And also we look at employer expectations. So our staff have experience, they've been employees, they speak to employees, they find out what it is that an employer is looking for, and try to work with those particular program participants in ensuring that we are giving them the skills to be successful in specific workplaces. So having that job development portion of it, next slide. Having that job development portion allows us to have our staff go and speak to employers, allows us to offer employers some wage subsidies perhaps. So we can reimburse employers up to 30 hours a week, minimum wage for up to 14 weeks. So minimum wage, 14 weeks at minimum wage for any program participants that may be appropriate. And this is just, we always think of it as a two-way street, right? As we're trying to prepare folks for the workplace, we want to make sure it's a good fit for the employers. And by providing that incentive, employers can feel a little bit more that we are invested in making sure folks are going to be successful. We ask for kind of, if not weekly, bi-weekly follow-ups from both the employer and the program participants to make sure things are going well. We want to step in and intervene as quickly as possible if necessary on both sides, just to make sure things really are going well. We also do very similar things with our pre-apprenticeship programs so training women in those non-traditional occupations. We currently have 8 skilled trades programs that we are recruiting program participants in. Once they have finished their training at one of the training delivery agencies, we will then be seeking employers for placements to give them that first bit of experience. So they'll have spent 12 to 14 weeks at a training institute learning the hands-on skills necessary. And then we want to actually put them to work, and we can reimburse employers up to $250 per week for those skills. And so next, I think we're going to be talking about the We Hire Immigrants. This is something that we're very, very happy with. And maybe if Uzma can join me online here. I don't know, can you spotlight 2 people at once? I don't know. Anyway, we do have this website, wehireimmigrants.ca. It is an initiative with the HIPC, the Economic Stability Committee. And it just provides employers an opportunity. I should be following these notes here. It's next steps to actually finding resources and places where employers can click on, can hear from other employers who have hired newcomers, see the richness, see some of the things that may be creating barriers to you bringing newcomers into your workplace. We have compiled a list for employers to look at getting started with hiring. You can find links to all major employment agencies that work with newcomers, like IWC and YWCA. There are some human resources documents for onboarding folks, employment webinars like this one, so that you can continually be learning, and also looking for any feedback. If there's any employers on here that would like to be highlighted as an employer on the WeHireImmigrants.ca website, I would encourage you to get in touch with HIPC, and they can tell you how that can happen. So thank you very much, everyone. And we'll now turn it over for any questions that may be out there.
Thank you to all our speakers. That was a lot of wonderful information. We can now take questions. If you have a question, just please put it in the chat and I will go through them. And our speakers, please jump in if you have a response to one of the questions. So getting started, requiring Canadian experience is considered a discriminatory practice by the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and for good reasons. However, it would be great to hear from employers today the business case for not requiring Canadian work experience from newcomers. Is there anyone that would like to jump in with that?
I could start as someone who has worked in the newcomer sector for a number of years. I always say to employers that Canadian experience, what are you really asking for when you're asking for Canadian experience? Do you want them to have worked in Canada, or do you want them to know the job? Do you want them to know the basics of what that job is? Are you looking for, what is it you're really looking for? Define for me what Canadian experience is. So at times I will ask that back to an employer, especially as part of the job development process. We want to know, what does Canadian experience mean?
And I will add to that to say that certainly from our company's perspective, we value and we acknowledge international experience. And somebody mentioned flavor. It brings way more flavor and diversity to the workplace. So if you have, experience from whatever country, it is recognized almost equally. Another thing that we've done is in our advice center or call center, over 1,000 employees, and we went there and intentionally, a few years ago, we discovered so many of our folks on just everyday advice, call center jobs were we had doctors there, we had engineers there, we had dentists there, and we were able to extrapolate and afford them opportunities within the greater company where their international experience could be aligned more appropriately with a job that was relative to their level of, education and capability. So to me, international experience is something that every company should consider as a qualifier. I know it's not all that way with everyone and everywhere, but we've had great success, fantastic success, and I would recommend it to any other employer.
Just to add to that as well, one that's a common thread between all companies and organizations is we're looking for out-of-the-box thinkers. We really need someone that has fresh ideas and new ideas. And what a fantastic, magnificent place to look for those out-of-the-box thinking from newcomer talent, because they're coming from a completely different experience, a different country that has, done business maybe very differently. And it just adds to the creativity that's required for an organization to really grow. And always remember, Hamilton, the landscape of Hamilton constantly is changing, and we see more and more diverse individuals coming into Hamilton, making Hamilton home. if your company isn't representing the communities that it's supposed to serve, you're missing out on a huge opportunity, really. And the city is missing out on a huge opportunity. Even at Immigrants Working Center, we obviously recognize international experience, and the large majority of our staff are newcomers. And that's what really adds to the richness of the organization. And it adds to people being able to connect with our clients. So with your customers or your clients as well, you will find the same experience.
Those are all really great responses. Was there anybody else that wanted to share a response before I jump to the next question? Okay, so what are some steps employers can take to create a positive work environment for immigrants?
I don't mind maybe starting things off. Someone just mentioned that establishing a workforce that represents, the people we serve. We need to embrace and celebrate diversity. One of the things we do is we literally incorporate it into our HR policies to establish hiring and recruiting practices that are, free from biases. And we even put metrics against it to make sure that we've got goals and targets and that we're really trying hard to be inclusive and really make sure that we're, taking in the groups that are, historically underrepresented and make sure that they have equal access to opportunities despite their cultural background or anything in that regard. So I would say there's so much. We need to start at the leadership, HR level, have it incorporated in our practices, and then live it out in our truths by doing the actual hiring and bringing them on board.
Thank you, Maria. Was there anybody else who wants to quickly share before we wrap up for the day?
I'd love to share, right? So one of the things that we do at Lorelei is we actually have excursions over weekends or after hours where we do things. We'll take the newcomers and the whole team. It's not exclusively just for newcomers, but to things like the maple syrup festivals or go see the waterfalls, because a lot of them are brand new to Hamilton. And I think it's nice for us who's been here for a while to kind of rediscover that and also to see it through a newcomer's eyes, because you forget, you start taking things for granted, right? And then, so that's one of the things that we do. And I think that helps build the cohesiveness of the team, but it's just relaxing, right? And enjoyable for everyone.
That's great. Thank you so much, Teresa. Well, we're at time now, so I just want to wrap up and thank everyone for joining us, especially all our guest speakers and sharing their valuable insights on our topic today. So for more resources, you can head to wehireimmigrants.ca. And again, thank you all for joining us. It's been a great session. Have a good afternoon.